research about finance in India. How has the financial structure in India changed since 1991?
There has been increasing liberalization with regard to the Indian economy. But I think with respect to the financial structure, the Reserve Bank has gone ahead and liberalized the interest rates to some extent, but I don't think it's totally free yet.
How has this benefited people throughout India in various economic levels?
Overall, there has been some good economic growth and development. And when I went there last time, I saw, for example, in my own village, people setting up businesses and seemed like people had more money and more happier and so forth. But I don't think it is filtered down to all the way down to the bottom. So seem like we still need to do a lot to bring up the standard of living and the income of the more of the poorer people in India.
With your students in your classes
Right,
here,
right.
how do they, what from your research
Right.
do you bring to them?
I teach international finance, so I talk about what is the Indian financial system like in India, and my specific research was comparing rather studying the bond markets and the returns over time. So when I taught about the bond markets of America, I was able to bring that research in India to my students and relate to that. I think doing that was beneficial to them, so I really like that. So.
In your research on finances and the economy, how do you position the stock market right now in the United States with what's the highs that it continues to go to? Do you have should I invest?
Good question. I guess stock market right now is kind of overvalued. I don't know where it will go. It is anybody's guess. All I can is stock markets do always fluctuate. But based on the fundamentals, right now it seems like it's kind of overvalued. But we have to wait and see. It depends on what happens to the economy from here on now. If it continues to grow, if interest rates remain low and inflation remains low, and also if the corporate earnings come out good, maybe the stock market will continue to go. But I think though right now it may be due for a correction. So.
Okay. Do you see the problems in the Asian markets as being resolved or having a prolonged negative effect on the American markets?
I think there's been a lot of discussion about that. Earlier, when Asian markets collapsed, people were saying that that would be very bad for our country. But when Asian markets did collapse, that kind of helped to cut down inflation here due to cheaper imports and so forth. And because of that, as a matter of fact, Federal Reserve, in fact, did not raise the interest rates. So I think it worked. It was bad, both bad and good. I think it was more good for us in some sense because it didn't really lead to the interest rate increase we were expecting. But then if Asia continues to suffer, that may have a bad effect on our economy down the road. And so I guess at this point in time, the verdict is still not in completely, I think. So.
And what future research plans do you have?
You mean in the same research area which I was doing, or overall in my research plan?
Either one.
Oh, one of my research areas is mergers area. So I'm continuing to look at the U.S. mergers area, and I also doing research on commodity funds, where I got a publication just now. I'm also engaged in research on class action lawsuits and their effect on the stockholder wealth, which I presented in a conference. I'm working on it, and I should be done with it pretty soon and be ready for publication also.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. We'll do it again. Okay, we're right there. Very good. Step around a little more on the side this time. Okay, we're right there. Very good. There we go, right there. Very good. One more time, chin down just a tight there. Okay, right there. Very good. Let's do something. Okay, there we go, right there. Very good, let's do it again.
I'm thinking about Bosnia.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, right there. Very good, let's go ahead and just see. Okay, good. It's just, that's it. Go right here for me. Very good. Just go a little higher angle this time. Okay, you're right there for me. Very good. All right.
A second
Yes,
Freeman
we
answer.
will. Really, we're going to edit it down. You aren't going to be speaking
Cool.
nearly as much as you're going to speak for a while here, and we're going to take pieces. So, okay. Traveling to Bosnia, there's been quite a lot of turmoil and war there. When you're there, does that affect your ability to work among the people? I mean, how do you get around in a war zone? Is basically what I'm asking.
Well, it's no longer. In answer to the question, how does one get around a war zone? I was fortunate in that the shooting part of the war is over in Bosnia right now. The devastation is still there, evidence of the devastation is still there, evidence of what the war did to the people is still there, but mobility is more or less okay. The movement between, say, Sarajevo or the Federation and the Republika Srpska was somewhat limited when I was there. I understand it's better now. I was not permitted to go into certain places because there were still mines, but I was able to go to the minefields, up to the minefields, not into them. So.
The women that you've been working with when you're there, I read the article and I sort of understand your response, your actions and your work, but I'd like to have you explain it again, just kind of briefly what you're doing when you're there and in connection with these women.
Okay, the research that I'm doing with the women in black and other women who protested against the war in Bosnia involves women who took a chance, took a risk by saying in public that the war in Bosnia was wrong. At the time they were doing that, their government in Serbia and the government in Croatia was denying involvement in the war at all, particularly the government in Serbia. The women in black in Serbia, in effect, called their government a liar and protested against Serb involvement in the ethnic cleansing, in the murder and the rape of women in Bosnia, of Muslim women in Bosnia. So what I'm doing is looking into why these women did this very brave act, where they found the courage, what were their motivations. This is not a common occurrence where women particularly can take to the streets and make a public political message that has some impact.
How does this relate to what, I realize you said you weren't teaching that course until next fall, but I mean, what from that do you bring to your classroom?
I'm hoping that the research that I do will, when I bring it back to the classroom, will help the students receive a more
You want to start over?
over with that?
Yeah, I think it was what's it going to do in your
Okay.
classroom, what will it bring to the classroom?
Okay, I'm hoping that the research that I'm doing will translate into my classroom work a more nuanced picture for the students of what the Bosnian conflict was about, what is happening in the Balkans also today. When we understand that war is not just black and white, but is gray and has many kinds of participants, not only soldiers and victims, but also those who are willing to take a stand against what they conceive as wrong, I'm hoping that my students will get a better picture of what happened in Bosnia, what is happening in the former Yugoslavia today, and what their role perhaps can be in the political arena.
Okay, let's try one more. there, what did you think you were able to bring to that? I mean, were you just there as an observer, or were you in some sense a participant? And if so, what did your participation add to the?
This is a disappointment. This is a disappointment. When I went to Serbia, Croatia, and Bosnia, I went as a researcher, as an observer, and I tried to understand what was happening there, but I did not try to alter or bring in my point of view or do anything that might in any way alter what they were trying to do or to suggest anything. What I did do, however, is consciously but not publicly, I made a vow that I would try to help other people understand what these women were trying to do, the bravery of it, and the courage that it took to publicly state a very unpopular view, but a moral view of a war.
Okay, that's real good.
That's for me there. There you go. That's good. Okay. Right out here for me. That's not very good. There you go. Sure. Right, just a little bit more out towards me. There you go. That's it. Okay, we'll do one like that.
Can we shoot two with?
Okay, right there. Very good. Like for you to square your body towards the camera. Very good. Okay. We'll try
The drum.
drums on the floor. You want him to rest his hands maybe on the drum or on his sort of folded or.
This would be what the playing position would be anyway. So,
Okay.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
Good.
but that's not the sitting. I mean, that's.
Okay. Let's just do a couple like that. Okay, right out here for me. There you go. Very good. Let's do it again.
Okay, now if you want to do some playing, whatever, just one, and John can shoot whenever it seems work.
Okay, go right ahead. That's fine. One more time like that. Okay. All right. Just maybe put your hand. Yeah, something if you want to. Yeah, that,
With your hand
resting
on your
or on your chin or something. Just kind of more relaxed. That's in the room.
Okay.
You want to do video now?
For the video, what we've done,
I'm gonna
I
drop the
think
blue
maybe
back
the
in.
blue better go back down.
Well, my study of Indian music enabled me to see the relationship between music and cultural worldview. It's very apparent in classical Indian music in that the structure of the music is really modeled after the ancient Vedic worldview. And that Vedic worldview lies at the basis of what I call the classical worldview, which is described and found in various religious scriptures of the world. I also found, though, that as I applied those same perspectives to European classical music, that you can find the same cosmological relationship between certain compositions of Mozart and J.S. Bach and so forth that are clearly being influenced by a particular religious or philosophical perspective in terms of their form, for example. And so my study of Indian music awakened me to that connection between music and cultural worldview. And oftentimes it occurs in an unconscious way. Other times it's an intentional aspect of the composer in designing his or her composition.
How do your students benefit, or what do you bring to the classroom that involves your students in this music or this worldview or this understanding?
Well, this has enabled me, this relationship between, that I've discovered between music and cultural worldview has enabled me to bring a liberal arts component, an active liberal arts component to my music teaching. Now I don't only teach an instrument, and it's not just a vocational thing of how to perform or how to play on an instrument, but I now can use the instrument and the music that I'm teaching as a vehicle to enter into discussions that are more philosophical and that are more cultural. and multicultural.
You shouldn't worry about repeating yourself, although maybe your other answers have covered this, but when you are in India or when you are doing this kind of research or this kind of creative process, what does the Indian component bring to either the work or to your thinking about the work? The Indian, the philosophy, does it make any difference in things that you produce or in things that you write?
Well, Indian music is very much integrated with dance, religion, mythology, scripture, mathematics, as well as just the act of playing the instruments. So it enabled me to see how in ancient times these disciplines were not separated out into their isolated components. If you took a music lesson, you were also getting a math lesson, and you were also getting a theology or religion lesson. Everything was happening at the same time. You were also getting a psychomotor lesson of how to play the instrument. Everything was integrated and conceived of as a whole. And I guess it becomes apparent to me how what the advantages of that is. There's a tremendous amount of advantages in that, but in our system today, in higher education, we categorize everything and separate it out and isolate it, and students very often fail to see the integration and the connections between the music and various components. Just as an example, in Indian music, poetry and music are really tied up together. But in the United States here, if you're going to study poetry, you go to the English department. You study music, you go to the music department. No one would come to the music department to study poetry. But the idea of separating music and poetry in classical Indian music was just unthinkable.
All right. That's fine. Okay. There you go. Nice smile for you right here. There you go. Very good. Oops, what else if I plugged it in? Here we go again. Right there for the test. Very good. Let's do it. I'm going to move that back line again.
Okay.
Okay, right here again for me. Okay, right there. Fantastic. Okay, here you go, right there. Nice smile. Very good. Okay, nice smile for you. We're going to do one more like that, then we're going to remove the box for a couple. Okay, right there. Very good. All right, let's do a couple without.
Should I look at you? Should I?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to do this again.
I do. Sometimes my hands are this way.
That's
or-
right, right there.
Okay.
There you go.
That's good, that's good, yeah.
Just turn your.
Okay.
That's great, right there. Very nice. All right. Yeah, that's it.
That's it? Okay.
All right. You want to start by asking me questions, or just have me start?
Why don't you begin by just talking about what your dissertation research was about?
Okay. My dissertation, should I look at you or at the camera? Where do you want me to? Okay. My dissertation was focused on administrators in a Midwestern school system and their propensity for change. I was focused on the environment in a school system and the practices and policies within a school system and how they either support or inhibit administrators as we try to go through school reform. Being an urban school system, we have lots of programs and policies that require administrators and teachers to change from what they've been doing for the last 20 years because the needs of students are different than they might have been trained in colleges and in universities. So I needed to know, as we began decentralizing our district, as we began having site-based management councils, how were administrators going to respond to some of the requirements we were putting on them?
Okay, in the process of doing this research, one ramification of what you've done is an effect on students. How has your research affected the students in the Fort Wayne
I think that the biggest impact has been that what my research found.
Can I stop you?
Okay.
I made a mistake, and I
Mhm.
forgot to warn you. I've tried to tell people. One of the problems when I ask the question is that people say it, or
Okay.
one of the problems that I found, but nobody knows because I'm not going to be in it. So
All right. My
you can say it,
dissertation, the
but
research.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, the research. Some proper nouns, and people are cued to what you're talking
All right.
about. I shouldn't have interrupted. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
The students and how.
Okay. The research from my dissertation showed that the administrators within the Fort Wayne Community Schools are ready and willing to change. I think this has had a positive impact upon the students in the district because as we've tried to increase math curriculum to make it more rigorous for students, as we've tried to include parents in school programs so that they can assist with their students, administrators have been more willing to do that, and that has had a direct and indirect impact on students and achievement.
Okay. What kind of effect did the information or the process of writing the dissertation, what did that bring to you personally?
I think one of the byproducts of writing a dissertation is to understand how much you can do. You have to organize your life, you have to organize your thinking, you have to organize to be able to research, you have to organize time more than anything. And I think that being able to do all of that and at the same time keep a family and keep a job has shown me that anything is possible. Anything.
Can you edit me out?
That's no problem.
Let's see. What were you able to bring to the research? What did you bring to the research or to the question? Why this question? Something about your connection with this specific issue.
One of the areas in my research and in my dissertation that I focused on was the impact of climate on the perceptions that people have and on their willingness to do things. I think that one of the tenets I have as an administrator, and one of the things that I try to support and promote at all times, is that people have to feel comfortable. They have to be in an environment where they feel supported and secure. And in my position as a deputy superintendent, that's one of the things that I am responsible for making sure that that happens. So as I did my research, it just supported what I feel is one of the things I believed in, that you have to make sure that the environment in an educational system is right, or else you won't get the changes and you won't see the impact of the changes.
I think that's it.
All right, let's try it. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and close it.
You wanted a fast shutter,
slow, probably.
slow shutter?
Yeah, just so I can see it.
Okay. It's gonna flash and then stay open. Okay? Maybe. Go.
Okay, do it so it's slow, so it closes up.
Okay, what about a half a second or so,
Yeah,
probably?
Yeah.
There's a half a second.
15, yeah, that's fine. Actually, 15 would be better.
Okay.
Doing it at 30th of a second, frames.
Yeah,
so.
okay. There you go.
Yeah.
That work?
Now, I want to do it again, but stop down the lens just one stop.
Okay.
I'll get that, was it
Okay.
6 or 8
Yeah.
second move on it. Just that around.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Now I need it to shut too, I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. I'll try to be quick and shutting the mirror down, so. But the lens will shut now,
Yeah, that's
the
no
way I've
problem.
got
Yeah,
it.
that's
So.
no problem. Go ahead.
Okay.